Hello, and welcome to today's KDP University's At Home with James Hunter. I'm Trisha, and for the past 4.5 years, I've moved around Amazon's books teams, learning the business so I can share it with authors. But we're not here to learn about me, we're all here to talk to James. James Hunter is a full-time ink slinger and an active member of SFWA and the best-selling author of the Yancey Lazarus series, Rogue Dungeon, Bibliomancer, and the LitRPG epic Viridian Gate Online. In addition to writing, James also runs a non-traditional publishing company, Shadow Alley Press, with his wife. James is a former Marine Corps sergeant, combat veteran, and pirate hunter. He's also a member of the Royal Order of the Shellback, which I'm totally interested to find out what that is, and a spaceship captain. Okay, so the last one may not be true, but when not writing or spending time with family, James occasionally finds time to eat and sleep. Welcome, James.
Hey everybody, so nice to be with you all. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here and just chat a little bit about my publishing journey and share any information I have to give.
Wonderful. We're so excited to have you here. So let's start for a minute. The Royal Order of Shellback. What is this?
So it's just a little joke that I include in my bio because it's so outlandish. So I was with the Marine Corps, but I was attached to a naval expedition unit called the MEU, the Marine Corps, or now I'm brain farting, of course, because I'm on KDP University. But so it was a naval fleet, and we would travel around. I was with the 13th MEU, which is a West Coast MEU, and we go out and we do various operations. But whenever you cross the equator on the MEU,
Mhm.
you become a shellback. So it's someone who's crossed the equator, and they go through this and crazy hazing ritual where you're on ship and Poseidon comes up and is on the thing, and you're all called polywogs, and you have to do insane challenges in the middle of the ocean for like 2 days. It's really fun, and then it ends in a big barbecue, and you get inducted into the Order of the Shellback. So it's just a funny little thing that I like to put in my bio. But yeah, that's I really enjoyed my time in service and my time on ship, and have a lot of fun stories about that I think kind of weave and work their way into a lot of the books that I write.
Well, good. And thank you so much for your service.
Oh no, happy to do it.
Well, good. Let's start with a little bit more background.
Yeah,
So when did you decide that being an author is your calling?
my whole life I think is a series of terrible decisions that somehow have resulted in success. I never really thought that I was going to be an author. That was not really anything that was on the horizon. I was a pretty active storyteller as a little kid. I had an active imagination. Never really thought I'd be a writer. Kind of toyed around with some short stories in high school, sort of fell off the back burner. I didn't really start writing again until the Marine Corps. I was on my first deployment in Iraq. We were in the Al Anbar region of Iraq, and in between
Mhm.
convoys, I would read books, and eventually I ran out of books to read. And so I had my laptop, and I started writing stories, and it was sort of short form science fiction, fantasy stuff. It was all bad, uniformly bad. I go back and I read it now. I'm like, oh my god, you noob! You're such a rookie. Look at all your terrible rookie writing mistakes. But that's kind of that got me into it. And so I sort of
Mhm.
wrote on and off in the Marine Corps just as sort of a hobby, and then sort of fell away from it when I got out in late 2009. I went back to school, got my degree. While my wife was getting her degree, she was getting a degree in chemistry. She went on to work at a pharmaceutical company. And then, because poor life choices, we decided that she would leave her job working for this great pharmaceutical company, and we would go live overseas with our 3-month-old baby in Bangkok, Thailand, as missionaries and international aid workers. Terrible,
Wow.
terrible life decision making choices. So we packed up everything. She quit her job, and we moved over there, and we were living in this little sort of rundown concrete hut in Hoi Kwang, which was a Thai Chinese part of Bangkok, that was
Mhm.
infested with roaches, and we were making like $16,000 a year between the two of us. and it was hard. It was the hardest thing I had done
Mhm.
since the Marine Corps, and so I needed an outlet, and so I started writing again. And it was I wrote my first novel while I was in Bangkok, um, and that became the novel that I would later go on to publish through KDP. I really wasn't expecting it to be a thing, and then it was a thing.
Mhm.
And it wasn't until after that that I was like, oh my god, like this could be a thing that I do, which was sort of the shocking revelation. So yeah, my sort of journey to publishing is a bunch of bumbling steps, unbeknownst on my way to success. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the genre that you primarily write in. You
Sure.
mentioned that, sci-fi fantasy, that's kind of your thing, but it's more than that, right?
Yeah, so mostly I haven't published anything that's really hard sci-fi. I generally
Mhm.
tend to write under the fantasy umbrella. I got my start writing sort of gritty, dark urban fantasy novels. That was the first series that I wrote, the Yancey Lazarus series that's still ongoing.
Mhm.
And I worked in that. I was able to transition and go full time while writing in urban fantasy.
Mhm.
And I still continue to write in urban fantasy, but now I also write in it's sort of an emerging genre that I think has really taken the Amazon store sort of by storm, which is LitRPG, sometimes called game lit. And when
Mhm.
people ask me about like, well, what is that exactly? It's a really broad um, category that's sort of hard to define and explain. I like to
Mhm.
say for the books that I write, it's sort of fantasy with a sci-fi twist. So all of these books sort of incorporate these game-like elements or game-like rules into the genre and into the world, and as sort of an essential part of the story. So in my series that I'm probably best known for, Viridian Gate Online, sort
Mhm.
of all of these people have to escape an apocalyptic event by sort of digitizing themselves. But the catch is the only digital platform big enough to hold all of these people is a giant fantasy MMO video game. So they survive the apocalypse, but now they're stranded as digital avatars in this giant ultra immersive fantasy world. So it's a little high concept, little fantasy mixed with some
Mhm.
cyberpunk elements, some gaming elements that sort of hang on the gamer culture, and it's such a pleasure to write. It's really fun because it kind of incorporates all the things that I love best, which is sort of high fantasy and getting to run an awesome D&D campaign and just sort of mashing them together in cool, interesting ways. So yeah, it's been really fun, and I really enjoy writing in that genre and finding readers who connect with that material.
Yeah, we had a lot of questions about lit RPG, and I agree. It's very difficult to explain. I kind of look at it as a way to be able to completely divest from reality and be able to do whatever you want in the story. Would that be an accurate
Yeah,
statement?
I think that that's definitely a big part of it. Definitely an escapist sort of
Hmm.
element to it. I sometimes equate it to portal fantasy. It doesn't
Hmm.
always take place in a landscape, but a lot of it does. And so I kind of think of it's like C.S. Lewis in Narnia, right? But instead of going into a
Hmm.
wardrobe and ending up in Narnia, you go into a deep dive capsule and you end up in this digital fantasy world, or it could be a sci-fi world. That's one of the interesting
Right.
components I think about lit RPG is it doesn't necessarily have to be fantasy. It can be sci-fi. It could be urban fantasy.
Hmm.
It really can sort of touch and cross over a lot of genres, as long as sort of
Hmm.
those game elements are they aren't involved in the story in a real and meaningful way.
Gotcha. So if you had to pick one character from your book, that's your favorite, who's it going to be? Who are you going to pick?
So I've written a lot of books. I've written I think 25 or 26 books. It's hard to keep track at this point,
Mhm.
but I read a series called Rogue Dungeon, which is also sort of game lit. And in it, there's this sort of secondary character. He's a side character, and his name is Kaz. And he's basically
Mhm.
an actual internet troll. He's a giant hulking online internet troll. He looks like just this brutal murder machine that if you ran into a dark alley, you would just want to curl up into the fetal position and just die because he's terrifying. But he's this big softy, and as his character sort of evolved, he discovers that he has a passion for cooking, and so he becomes the first sort of online internet troll gourmet. And a lot of his character arcs revolve around completing quests to get rare ingredients and make food. He has a battle cry that's for salt, because he sort of discovered salt and the wonders of its ability to increase flavor, and it was such a revelation to him that he glommed onto that and forever has been influenced by salt and its ability to enhance and make the world better. And so a lot of his drive to crush bad guys is to preserve good food. So yeah, it's a really fun character, and I think that the fact that fans enjoy him so much and sort of his big
Mhm.
bumbling sweetheart attitude makes him such a fun character to write, because I really like seeing how fans react to whatever misadventures I can throw Kaz into, and the way that he
Mhm.
responds. So, I mean, I have a lot of fun characters, but I think Kaz is definitely probably number one that I enjoy writing.
So, as an internet troll, did you write this as a response to the stereotypical internet troll that we see? Is this kind of
Yeah.
your response to
So
that?
he is literally a troll. He's a dungeon troll, but he also hooks up with a lot of actual internet trolls. One of the other main characters in that series is a video game player who goes by the handle of Poner Boner, and
Mhm.
he's the worst. He's just the worst person on the planet. But it's really
Uh-huh.
fun to write. It sort of explores sort of the nuance of these people that online have sort of these really caustic personalities.
Mhm.
It can be really over the top, but that, like, when you kind of just scratch below the surface a little bit, you find out, like, these are bad people. They're just, sometimes they're lonely, or sometimes they just want to have fun, or sometimes they want to pull a prank on someone, or whatever it is. And so it's fun to
Mhm.
sort of explore that relationship of how people how people are different in real life than their internet personas, and kind of what that looks like. So that's one of the things that I do explore quite a bit in the Rogue Dungeon
Mhm.
series, particularly, is sort of the difference between real life and internet persona, and how that affects you, and how that affects your life.
Gotcha. Gotcha. I bet that's a lot of fun.
So fun. I This is the best job. I have had a lot of jobs. This is hands down the best job that I've ever had in my whole life, because I get to, like, sit at home with my family and my kids and tell
Mhm.
imaginary stories about gourmet trolls and actual internet trolls, and people pay me lots of money to do it. It's really just the best thing I ever could have imagined. It's great.
Good. So let's talk about that a little bit. The fact that you're an independent author um, means that you're running your own business. So
Yep.
can you tell a little bit about your day to day? What does that look like?
Yeah, it's different now than it was when I first started out. So I think that,
Mhm.
what I do now is maybe not as helpful to someone who's really fresh. When I
Mhm.
just started out, I had looked at going traditional publishing. I had sort of looked into agents and query letters. I had sent out a couple query letters and got some rejections. And I just thought, this is not for me. I don't want to be an author. This is not my
Mhm.
path. I'm just going to self-publish it, thinking it was not going to be a thing. And then when it became a thing, I had to really learn the business side of things. And early on, it was just me. My wife was really supportive, but I was kind of running both sides of the business, where I would write for about 4 or 5 hours a day, and then I would spend the other 3 or 4 hours a day doing the business side of stuff, whether that was working with cover artists, or whether that was doing taxes. That's not true. I've
Mhm.
never done taxes. My wife has always done the taxes. That's a lie. So that part she's always done. But booking out the marketing campaigns,
Mhm.
building lists, doing all of the stuff that a publisher would do. And I think that that's one of the
Mhm.
things that's sort of a misnomer when people think about self-publishing. They sort of think that, like, and I think the stigma is fading, where originally, maybe 10 or 15 years ago, people thought, oh, this is kind of like vanity publishing. It is not. It is a business where real authors are publishing real stories that people love to read. And I think
Mhm.
that that's finally starting to catch on. And a big part of that is because indies have become so much more professional. As an independent
Right.
publisher, we have to do all of the things that a big five traditional publisher is going to do, because I'm not just
Mhm.
competing against other indies. I'm competing against all books. I'm competing against Harry Potter and George R. R. Martin
Mhm.
and the Dresden Files. I'm competing against all of those books that sort of are in my categories. And so my covers have to be just as good as theirs. My editing has to be
Yeah.
just as good as theirs. My ad copy, everything has to be on point, or people are not going to buy our books. And so, that's a big part of what we do, is doing all of the stuff that a traditional publisher would do for you. And now we have a
Mhm.
team. My wife came on full time in 2016, which is when our
Okay.
business really started to take off. And we started to take on some other authors, and now we publish 14 authors, as well as myself. Um, and she took over sort of the business side of things, and so now
Mhm.
my day to day is a little bit different. I still do a lot of writing, and then I also do sort of the creative directing. I'm the creative director for the publishing company as well. So on top of writing my own stories, I help storyboard with our authors. I look over
Mhm.
outline, do developmental editing on a lot of the projects that we publish. I do all of the art direction stuff. So I put out the art briefs. I work with the authors. I work with the artists. I make sure that all of the covers that we're putting out sort of are in line both with the book, but also with our brand as a publishing company. And then Jeanette
Right.
does the huge marketing effort. She runs all of our, AMS campaigns. She runs our email list campaigns. She does our email builders. I mean, she does just an enormous amount of work on the business side of things.
Mhm.
And really, I would say that we just couldn't do this without just a team. I mean, you really, even when I was doing it by
Mhm.
myself, I needed a team of competent cover artists and editors and other people other than myself to make it work.
So let's go back to when you were first starting. You talking
Yes.
about having cover artists, and so did you design your own artwork or for the cover at all, or have you always outsourced that?
Oh yeah, never, never. I know where my limitations are. Hard stop. And I think that's one of the things that has made us successful in large part is realizing that there are things that we're not good at. I feel like I'm a pretty good writer, maybe not the best writer, but I can tell a decent yarn. But there are a lot of things that I'm not good at. And if I tried
Mhm.
to put together a cover, even if I have a really great book, no one's going to read it because my cover's going to look terrible. And I knew that instinctively going in, like just as a reader, I was like, well, how do I shop for books? I look at covers, and if I like a cover, I read the back ad copy, and if I like that, then I buy the book, or I'll do, read the first 10 pages or whatever it is. And so
Mhm.
just as a reader, it instinctively occurred to me that, like, well, if that's how I shop as a reader, that's probably how other readers shop as readers. So I can't put out a
Right.
book that looks like someone hand doodled a cover on a piece of lined notebook paper. That ain't going to work. So even from the
Mhm.
very beginning, I knew that we needed a professional cover, and it was hard because back when we first started out, we were living in Bangkok. We were making no money. I mean, no money. We For the first 3 months we were in Thailand, we couldn't afford like furniture, so like we didn't have a couch. We just sat on the floor and like ate sticky rice off of rice mats on our floor with our little baby. Um, and when I told my wife, "Hey, I want to self-publish, and I think it's going to cost
Mhm.
us about $1,500 to do it right," it was kind of a shock because $1,500 is a lot of money to someone who couldn't afford a couch. Um,
Right.
but she was really supportive and said, "Hey, if that's what you think, I'm on board." And so we saved up, we penny pinched and saved up for about 7 months to be able to afford the content editing and the cover art and the small marketing budget I needed to launch the project. And while we were doing that, I was reading every book I could find on indie publishing. Let's Get Digital
Mhm.
and write, publish, repeat, all of the things, listening to Joanna Penn's podcast and Mark
Mhm.
Dawson's ad for author stuff and just going down the rabbit hole so that when I launched my book, I had a pretty good idea of what was going to give me the best shot to have success.
Good. So let's talk a little bit about how you found, you specifically said, your cover artist, your copy editor, and then the marketing campaign. So let's take those piece by piece. How did you
Yeah.
find your cover artist?
That was really hard. And I will say, um, it's still one of the things that's the biggest struggle for us. Now we have about
Mhm.
7 or 8 cover artists that we use pretty regularly and have really good relationships with. But
Mhm.
cover artists are still one of the biggest pains of indie publishing. I love all of the artists that we work with, but I've worked with a lot of really flaky artists who don't
Mhm.
know about deadlines or how to follow through, or they're artists. They're sometimes good artists are not good business people, and I have found that to be
Right.
true with a lot of the cover artists out there. um,
Mhm.
so but what I did early on was I went to K-boards and I looked through just the K-board yellow, like the yellow pages, and I just looked for things. Now I think that there's a better resources. K-boards I think is still a valuable option if you are absolutely brand new and don't know where to start. But there are so many excellent Facebook groups out there that
Mhm.
you know. One that I use a lot is 20 Books to 50K. They have a lot of resources and recommendations on their Facebook page that you can sort of comb through and just look for covers that you like. One thing that I do often is I'll look at the covers that are in my genre or covers that are in genre adjacent genres to the one that I write in, and I'll say, man, that's a cover that catches my eye.
Mhm.
That's a cover that makes me want to stop and pick that book up and read the back. who made that, and then I will go out and I will look for that particular artist. Sometimes the authors
Hmm.
will credit them in the books. Sometimes you can do, reverse Google image finds to figure out where it is, because often those authors will display those covers in their portfolio on their websites, and then you
Hmm.
can sort of run down leads that way. It does take a lot of legwork, but it's definitely worth it to find the right artist who's going to give you a good product.
Okay, so let's go to that copy editor. So why is it, if you had such a small budget, why did you pick the cover, the copy editor, and we'll focus on the copy editor now, and then we'll talk about marketing in just a second. But
Yeah,
why was the copy editor also important?
you know, I had run my book through self edits, I don't know, 7 times. And I had someone read. I think my wife read it for me. She reads all my stuff, and she's my first reader. And she came back with edits. And I said, I have self edited this 7 times, and my wife still found a lot of edits. And my wife is
Hmm.
not an editor, which means
Right.
that if I put in this much effort and miss things, and she put in
Hmm.
this much effort, chances are she's still going to miss things. And I think that
Right.
one of the things I knew early on is that if I wanted to compete, I needed to do it at the level that trad publishers were putting out books, which meant that
Hmm.
I needed to have not only a good story, but a story that was well written, that was
Hmm.
free of the majority of grammatical flaws and errors and misspellings
Right.
and typos. I knew that that was going to affect how readers enjoyed the book and what kind of success that it would have. Because I knew, again, that
Hmm.
as a if I picked up a book and I was reading through it and I said, man, the story is great, but boy, this person can't spell for crud, or boy, look at
Right.
all of these. It would throw me out of the story. It would make me want to put the book
Hmm.
down, and
Right.
that was something that I didn't want. I wanted to write a book that someone picked up and didn't want to put down until it was over. And I knew that a lot of editing and grammar mistakes would
Hmm.
hurt that bad.
Right.
And so I said, hey, cover art number one, copy editors number two. And that was it was expensive, and just like finding a
Hmm.
good cover artist was hard, finding a good copy editor is hard too. And I went through 4 different copy editors before I finally found one that I was happy with the work that they did. And she's been my copy editor for 6 years now, and she
Hmm.
does 2 manuscripts a month for us now. Um,
Wow.
but I mean, it took a long time to find and build that relationship. So I would say,
Hmm.
when you do find your copy editor who's good, treat them like gold. Just take care of them, like comb them,
Right.
brush them. Don't be creepy, but also swaddle them and care for them like a newborn baby, and give them whatever they want, because a good copy editor is worth their weight in gold, and treat them well.
Hmm. That's a really good call out. And I think that that's something we hear over and over again. Cover art and copy editing. That's where your investment. And great call out on the fact that you're going to have to shop around. The first person you work with may not be your forever copy editor, and be willing to work and see what fits, because you want somebody that fits your style.
Yeah, absolutely. And it can be really hard at first, because you can feel like
Hmm.
you're spinning your wheels, or like, oh, am I wasting money? You're not. It,
Hmm.
there is money that you have to spend to make this work. But
Hmm.
again, it's a business. You have to treat it like a business. And part of that is finding that right fit, and finding that person who's going to be able to
Right.
make your book sort of shine, so that readers can enjoy the story for what it is and not get lost in all of the messed up prose.
Hmm. Okay. So we've got a couple questions that have come in that I think are relevant right here.
Sure.
Um, what's the decision point between a cover you like and a cover that will help sell the book better? I think this is an excellent question.
Oh, this is as so I'm the art director for Shadow Alley, and this is something that comes
Hmm.
up all the time. I'll work with some of our new authors, and they'll submit an art brief, and they'll, oh, I want this thing on it, and it needs to, this is really important to the book, and I need to have that thing in it, and I want to have this
Hmm.
thing. And sometimes authors will design a cover that is deeply meaningful to them in the book, and will absolutely sell no books, because someone's going to look at
Yep.
it and they'll say, wow, that's a hot mess. You have 100 different things. You have no focal point. The color scheme is terrible. The title treatment's atrocious. Everything about this cover doesn't work. And the author will say, but I love it. It captures the
Hmm.
feeling of my story so well. It doesn't matter. That's not the point. The cover is not for you, author. The cover is for readers who don't know what your story is about. It's a calling
Hmm.
card to entice them to read your book. Some of the things
Right.
that I talk about a lot with our authors is that accuracy is not as important as you think that it is. I would rather have a cover be slightly less accurate and really cool
Hmm.
looking than be very accurate and not cool looking. So
Hmm.
I'm willing to get away from accuracy a little bit, if it's going to serve the rule of cool. Um, the cover should, one, tell readers this is a professional product that someone paid money to assemble and it looks good. That's the most important
Hmm.
thing that a good cover that's going to sell books should do. Number two, the cover should clearly define and broadcast the genre and the tone. I should be able
Hmm.
to look at your cover and say, this is a paranormal romance. I know exactly what this is without ever picking it up, without ever reading the ad copy or ever looking at the interior, because this cover tells me what the book is in a nutshell. I should be able to look at it and
Hmm.
say, oh, yep, that's high fantasy, or oh, yep, that's crunchy, hard military sci-fi. There are tropes
Right.
for all of those different genres out there. And if you do your research, you should be able to look and see what's selling. What are the elements that readers are glomming onto? And it's very simple to do this. You can just go on to Amazon and look at the top
Hmm.
100 lists and see which books are selling in the genres and say, oh, look at this. They all have spaceships on them. Look at all of these spaceships. Hey, I write hard military sci-fi. Maybe my cover should have a spaceship, right? Like
Right.
there are sort of these rules that are in play, um, that readers sort of subtly pick up on, and that as authors we need to make sure that we're doing too. So professional, it
Hmm.
should indicate the tone, it should indicate the genre, it should not be over the top, it should have clear focal points, and it should be professional. I think that if you can hit all of those things, you're going to have a cover that's going to sell much better than something that's deeply personal to you, but that nobody else is going to care about.
I think those are excellent points. Let's get back to the copy editing for a moment. I think the next logical step that we get questions around are beta readers. Do you
Oh
use
yeah,
beta readers?
yes.
Okay.
It always have, always will. We have alpha readers and beta readers. So the alpha readers are involved sort of even at an earlier stage in the process. So I'm a really heavy outliner. And even for the authors that we work with, most of them spend a lot of time in the outlining process. We do a lot of our developmental editing actually while we're outlining the book, as opposed to doing it
Hmm.
in editing, because it's a lot easier to fix maybe 10,000 words in an outline, or a paragraph in an outline, than it is 10,000 words in a manuscript that's already done. And so
Hmm.
we use alpha readers even at the earliest stages to make sure that they like our characters, that the story
Hmm.
flows well, that there's no giant plot holes, that everything kind of hangs together, that the climax is sort of unexpected yet inevitable. We want all of those things to sort of add together, and so even in the earliest stages, we get alpha readers involved to make sure that we're sort of hitting all of those beats and all of those notes. And then we turn it over to beta readers, and we have a street team. I have personal beta readers that I use, but we also have a Shadow Alley street team, which is composed of readers who have said, "Hey, we really love the books you put out. We want to get more." We'll distribute arcs to them, to sort of
Hmm.
get feedback, to find anything else that may have slipped through the cracks, and then ultimately to help boost reviews on day of release. Because if you have 50 or 100 people who have already read the book and are on your team and big advocates,
Hmm.
oftentimes they're willing to go and leave an honest review. I will say, and we're always very careful. We tell them, hey, leave honest reviews, and sometimes we'll have a beta reader that says, hey, I've loved every book that James has ever written. This one didn't connect for me. 3 out of 5 stars. You know, maybe the next one, and that's okay.
Hmm.
I think that even getting sometimes mixed reviews early on is not bad, because it's still social proof that people are reading the book and enjoying the book. Or if there's
Right.
something that they didn't like about the book and they say, hey, this had way too much spaceships in it. Someone else might say, but I like spaceships. So if it had way too much, that might be my jam. So yeah, beta
Hmm.
readers are really important. We put a call for beta readers at the back of every book that we publish. Hey, if you like our book, if you want to be a Streak Team member, click on this link, go and find out how to become a Streak Team member, to sort of filter and draw people into the process.
Can you tell me then, if they click on that link, what's the next sequence of events that, how do you vet your beta readers?
Yeah, so basically from there, it'll take them to our webpage. to
Mhm.
the street team webpage to kind of explain how the process works. And then there's basically a questionnaire that they fill out. And
Mhm.
it says, hey, which book did you read? Why do you think you would be a good fit? What do you love most? What are some of the other books that you enjoyed reading? How fast do you read? Kind of takes them through a list of questions. They hit submit. We read them over. If we feel like, hey, this is a good fit, um, we sort of follow through with that process. We include them in our Facebook street team group. From there, what we do is we post book funnel links for ARC
Mhm.
copies, and book funnel is a great tool that we use to disperse all of our sort of ARC copies, and we
Mhm.
sort of track who takes those books. So we find, if a beta reader takes a book, or if a beta reader takes 15 books, but never
Mhm.
follows up on any of those books, or never leaves reviews for any of those books, or never gives us feedback on any of those books that they're taking, then we'll usually send a follow-up email and we'll say, hey, you got to do something. This is a beta reader group,
Right.
not just a free books group. So you have to give us some kind of feedback, some kind of input, leave reviews, do something, be active. And if they don't, we'll cut them from the
Mhm.
group and we'll move on. So that's kind of how
Gotcha.
that process works.
Any concern about the security with your beta reader group?
It's something that does come up.
Mhm.
Our books constantly get found on pirate sites, which
Yeah.
sucks. They're everywhere. We have, our operations director goes and submits takedown notices whenever we see the books, and but
Yeah.
they pop up. The audiobooks pop up on YouTube, and I mean, it happens. I'm not sure that there's a good way to stop the piracy, or to stop
Mhm.
those manuscripts from getting leaked out. In the beta copies, we do have on the very front, we have a beta reader version of the book that's different than the final version of the book. And on the very first page, it says, hey, this is a beta reader copy that's not meant for distribution. If you have this book and you're not on the team, please stop reading it. And that's kind of all that we can
Mhm.
do at that point. But yeah,
Right.
it is a concern. Yeah, that's the beta reader thing. Mostly, we've been doing this for 5 years, and we've had mostly good experiences with beta readers.
Good. Good. Glad to hear that. All right, let's get into marketing. I think that's always our next question that everybody has. So you mentioned when you first released that first book, the three spots that you were going to spend money were cover, editing, and now advertising. Can you
Hmm.
talk a little bit about um, advertising
Yeah, absolutely.
with that first book?
And again, it's a little bit different. What we do now is not what I was able to
Right.
do then, because we have a lot of money now to spend, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I can spend $1,000 a month in ad campaigns or more and not
Right.
blink at that. But early on, I did not have that kind of money to spend. I had a small marketing budget of about $200 built in, and so what I found, and this is held true sort of through my publishing experience, is that you either need to spend money or you need to spend time. If you don't have a lot of money, you can still market your book. You're just going to have to do the legwork yourself. And
Hmm.
so, sort of while I was saving up my money for my first book,
Hmm.
um, I was learning everything that I could about indie publishing, but I wasn't only doing those things. The book was going through copy edits. It had gone through copy edits, and one of the things that I had done early on that was free was I hounded, and in a professional way, but like I beat down every book reviewer's door that I could find, because there are book bloggers and book reviewers all over the internet. And maybe they
Hmm.
don't have huge audiences, but they all have their own audiences, and a lot of them are niche genre readers that read in a very
Yep.
specific genre. And so I would go through and I made a spreadsheet, of 100 different book bloggers, and I would, I created these, I called them book flyers, and it was sort of a PDF
Hmm.
document. This was closer to launch. This was about 2 months out from launch, when I had my cover done. So I had my cover on there, kind of looked nice. I had my ad copy on there. It had book details. This is the genre. This is the word count length. This is all that stuff. Um, and then I would very courteously send this out to book bloggers, and I would say, hey, I'm a new author. This is my book. I would love to send you an ARC, the digital ARC copy to review. And I'll say that probably 50 to 60% of those book bloggers turned me down. But there were so
Hmm.
many of them, and I was doing so much work that I did get a fair amount of exposure just by talking to people who already love the genre and were in the genre. And I picked up a lot
Hmm.
of early fans that way, by just putting my book out there, saying, "Hey, my book's going to release on this date. If you like it, please." leave a review, post about it on your blog. Sometimes the reviews weren't great, and sometimes they were really great. I mean, that's again, it kind of
Mhm.
goes back to the beta reader paradox, right? Sometimes you're going to get stuff that it isn't awesome, but at the same time, it's social proof. People are reading this
Right.
thing, people are talking about this thing, they're pushing it out to their audiences, and all of that stuff is organic visibility that can lead back to your book. So I spent a
Mhm.
lot of time doing that. I had built a very small mailing list, and this is something that I think that new authors can do too, even if you have not released a book yet. Um,
Mhm.
Something that's pretty easy to do is to write a small short story that we call reader magnets, and you can use Facebook, especially works really well for this, and you can push it out as Facebook's a great lead generator, and you can push out your free short story as a reader magnet and say, hey, check out this thing for free, sign up for my mailing list, you get it, and if you like this
Mhm.
kind of thing, you'll get updates about books that are similar to it, right? And
Right.
that's been a really effective strategy. That's really cheap and effective. You have to put in the time, you have to write the story, you have to do the legwork, you have to push it out there, but it's cost effective, and can net you some big numbers. I built a really cheap website. I think it was just like a blog host website, one of the free version web. I can't even remember at this point. It's been 6 years, but just like a free version of a website where I just kind of had some contact information. I had the read for free links even then on so that when people clicked, they could sign up to my mailing list and they could sign up to become a beta reader. Um, and so I built that out very early on. I started to sort of build a social media presence. I
Mhm.
connected with groups on Facebook that were genre groups of people that sort of liked these things already. And I didn't go in there as an author. I went in there as a reader, because the thing is, I don't write in genres that I don't already enjoy reading.
Mhm.
You can do that, but I think that readers notice if you have a
Mhm.
fire and a passion for the thing that you're doing. Um,
Right.
and so I would just go in there and I would interact and I would recommend other books, and I would say, oh man, I read this book and it was so great, or oh, did you see this new author release this thing, that was amazing, or oh, I went and saw this movie, whatever it was. I made myself a part of those communities just as a person. And so then when my book came out, and I said, hey guys, I decided to do a thing, I published this book. I had a lot of support from people who were already sort of my ideal readers, because they were interacting in
Mhm.
groups with books that were similar to mine. um, and they supported me because I was a community member, and that was a big part
Right.
of what I did. It took a lot of time, and it still takes a lot of
Mhm.
time. We still do a lot of that community involvement and engagement, but it's free. You either spend the money or you spend the time.
Really good advice. I think that that's one of the questions that we get frequently is, how do you market if you're on a really tight budget? And I think everybody getting started is usually on a really tight budget. So
Yeah,
those are some
absolutely.
really good concrete steps that people can take. We did get a follow-up question um, about paying book bloggers reviews. Do they cost money?
No, so you can do a blog tour, and blog tours can be effective too. There's a number of different ones out there that are genre based, and they can range anywhere from $50 to $200, and they'll get you
Mhm.
featured spots on a number of different sort of blog spots. That can be a good way to go if you want to work that into your marketing budget and you have an extra $50 to $100 and you want to do a blog tour. What I did was not that.
Mhm.
I approached individual book reviewers and asked them to review my book. I didn't pay them any money. There's no exchange there. I just give them a free book. That's
Mhm.
what they get out of it, is they love the genre, they love the books in that genre, and they get an opportunity to read and review books before they come out. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, that's a free thing that you can do. Blog tours are a little bit different. They also have it's sort of a mixed bag, but I think that if starting out, it can still be some good organic visibility and exposure.
Gotcha. I'm supposed to ask you about the inflatable dinosaur as a marketing tool. Does that make sense to you?
It makes, yes, absolutely makes sense. So Shadow Alley does a number of giveaways, and again, this is something else that we do to build out our mailing list. So we do reader magnet
Mhm.
giveaways, which are short stories. We have books that we give out, all kinds of stuff. But we also do wonky giveaways as well. So our latest giveaway that we ran was for an inflatable dinosaur suit, because that's what our readers said they wanted the most. We said, hey, we could give you like a Kindle. We could run a giveaway for this thing, And we had a whole list of options, and they said
Mhm.
inflatable dinosaur suit. That's the thing that they wanted more than anything else in the whole world. And so we said, hey, if this is what people want, we'll give them this thing. And so we ran a month-long giveaway for some Shadow
Mhm.
Alley Press swag and a bright red inflatable dinosaur suit, and people loved it. So it was novel. It was a little bit strange and quirky. But
Mhm.
then so are our books. So are we as people. My wife and I are kind of strange and wonky, a little bit quirky. So I think that that's kind of on brand for us.
Well, I think that that's an excellent call out is that, people get really stuck in, I have to do a book giveaway, or I have to do an advanced reader copy, or I have to do, what everybody thinks is the traditional marketing campaign. So being able to listen to your audience and come up with those unique ways of interacting with your audience, I think says a lot about you as, you and your brand.
Yeah, and that's something that we really, and I think that that goes back to our roots early on of just being involved in community engagement, really talking to, just other people, and then transitioning so that we talk to our readers and being really active in the groups that we're involved in. I mean, if you go in a lot of the big genre groups and you say, hey, James Hunter, when's this thing coming out? I'm going to hop on, I'm going to tell you, because it doesn't matter. I want you to know. I want you to know that I'm listening, that I'm being engaged. If you have questions, if you want to talk about books or my books or someone else's books, we make it a point to make sure that we're engaged with our community and that we're listening to the things that they want, the things that they like, and the things that they don't like, because ultimately our job is to entertain readers. And
Mhm.
through giveaways, through books, our job is to make their lives a little bit better, a little bit happier for a little while, and so that's what we aim to do.
Good. Um, Now, obviously, as you've gotten larger, your marketing of a new release has changed. So can we talk a little bit about kind of a step-by-step of how you release a book and what your marketing is for a new release?
Sure, and our a lot of these things, I think it does require some money, but
Mhm.
maybe not as much as you would think, because again, we have a lot of authors, and so our marketing strategy is similar, even for authors that sort of are brand new. I mean, they
Mhm.
have like our press behind them, but in terms of like social engagement, they're debut authors. They don't have any sort of reader bias in their favor or against them,
Right.
and so they're kind of clean slates, and
Mhm.
so even with folks who have no previous success, that a lot of the things that we do marketing wise work well for us. Some of the things that we
Mhm.
do, I will say, and I'm going to put a caveat on all of the advice that I give. None of this is hard and fast, because, uh, and Amazon, I love Amazon so much, but Amazon is also a black box of mystery that no one really understands what it is or how it works or why things work the way that they do. And it's all of us indies are trying like, well, maybe it's cancer is in ascending. I don't know. Nobody knows. So there's a lot of guesswork of how we think things work. And so,
Mhm.
there's lots of strategies out there that work. This works. This is just what works for us. Generally,
Right.
what we do with books is we do a short pre-order period,
Mhm.
usually somewhere in the frame of 2 weeks to a month, is kind of our pre-order
Okay.
period for most books. During that time, we don't tell anybody that the book is out, which is weird. A lot of
Yeah.
authors will heavily promote, "Hey, my book's up for pre-order." We don't. Especially for
Uh-huh.
new authors, we definitely don't, because what we really don't want to have happen for new authors is we don't want. So let's say that I write a gritty urban fantasy novel, and then I
Mhm.
tell my, hey, my book's up for pre-order. My mom, not a gritty urban fantasy reader. She's a cozy mystery reader, right? So my mom says, oh, I'm going to
Right.
support my son. And she goes and buys it. And then she tells her reading group, who are also cozy mystery readers, oh, my son bought a book. They're never going to read it, but they want to be supportive. So they go and they buy your pre-order book and say, all right, I got 20 pre-orders. I'm doing pretty good. Except that
Mhm.
when you look on your page, you Amazon's starting to generate also bots, and also because it's only got 20 points of sales data, and so the also bots are all cozy mystery books, because the only people that have bought your book are cozy mystery readers. And so you say, well, that's weird. I'm sure it's fine. I'm sure that's not going to be a problem. Wrong. Big problem. Because Amazon thinks that your book is a cozy mystery book. It doesn't know. You're giving them sales data, and it says, well, the people who like cozy mysteries like this thing, so this must be a cozy mystery book. And so when Amazon does start to promote your stuff and push it out along the also bought networks, it's going to start to push it to cozy mystery readers who are going to look at the cover and they're going to say, this is not cozy mystery. This person did a good job on their cover, and I know that based on genre and theme that this is definitely urban fantasy, not my cup of tea at all. They're not going to click on it. They're not going to buy it. Amazon's going to say, oh, this book is not converting well. It's a dud. They're going to move on. They're going to stop showing your book. So we don't tell anybody because we don't want the wrong kind of also bots in our also bots. Instead, what we do is we run really heavy AMS ads over the course of that period of time, targeting very specific books and very specific authors that we want to appear in our also bots. And we'll spend a big portion of our marketing budget for a book before the book ever comes out. We don't tell anybody. We do lots of heavy AMS ad spending. My wife will run a campaign as soon as the book goes live, and we're up and away. And really, our goal for a brand new book, brand new author, no history. I mean, we really want to get sort of that 50 pre-order mark is really what we want to see just off of AMS without telling anybody. And then that's going to start to generate those good also bots. Once the book goes live, we have a couple of different strategies. We generally stagger our release. So a lot of people, and again, I know I have friends who do it different ways that works well for them. But what we do is we want different portions of our audience to know about it at different times, because in our experience, Amazon seems to favor sustained sales over a spike of sales. In our experience, if you have 100 sales on day one, that's great. But I think it would be better to have 20 sales, over 5 days than have 100 sales on day one and 0 sales on days, 2 through 5, right? And so what we try to do is we stagger who knows about the book at different times. So we have our mailing list, which is large, admittedly very large, but it's segmented out. And so different portions of our mailing list will be emailed throughout the week. So group A will get an email on Monday, group B on Tuesday, group C on Wednesday, group, letters are not my strong suit, whatever letters next to the alphabet, I've lost track, but Thursday and Friday, so that a different portion of my readership is seeing that the book is live at different times to try to make sure that we have sort of those sustained sales, which we think makes the sales rank a little bit more sticky so that you stay higher placed in the store for longer. We also do the same thing with a lot of the social media groups that we're involved with. And so this group will be notified about it on Tuesday, that group on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, etc., to make sure that readers are finding out about it at different times. If you use, if you don't have a big mailing list, like, because most authors, even if they're doing the reader magnet, they're just starting out, if they have a 500 or 600 person mailing list, they're doing pretty awesome. You can do paid services that do have, they're basically, rent a mailing list, right? Where you can go and you can pay $40 and they will blast it to their email list. Those services, there are some that are really, really good, like BookBub. There are some that are not so good, but even the not so good ones, we've found generate usually 5 sales. So that doesn't seem great because maybe you're spending $40 to get 5 sales, which means that you're having a huge negative ROI on that investment. But it's more about getting those sustained sales so that Amazon says, hey, this is a book that's performing well, and you start to move up those top 100 lists where you'll get organic visibility so that readers who are in your genre will say, oh, this is a new thing I haven't seen before. Wow, really snazzy cover. Hey, awesome ad copy. Hey, the first 10% doesn't suck. I'm going to buy this book. So really, it's not about those sales in and of themselves. It's about generating that organic visibility that allows your reader base to pick it up. So that's kind of what we do on a launch.
Okay, interesting. So we've got about 10 minutes left, and there's a couple things I want to cover within that 10 minutes.
Sure.
The first thing, we've gotten some questions about paid advertising for social media, things like Facebook, Google Ads. Do you use paid advertising for social media?
We don't use Google Ads. We've looked into it a little bit. Our philosophy, and I think that there are people that use Google Ads really well. Our philosophy is learn one platform and learn it really well before you move on. Otherwise, you can end up doing a bunch of things very poorly. If you want to be on Twitter, be on Twitter. If you want to be on Instagram, be on Instagram. But sort of pick a platform and learn it and learn all of the features it has to offer, before you move on to something else. Otherwise, you're just going to be sort of half-heartedly doing a lot of little things that are really going to amount to nothing. As where if you can do one thing really good, I think you're going to get a better bang for your buck. And so we really focus on Facebook and Amazon. That's kind of the
Mhm.
only two places we do paid advertising. Um, we do run Facebook lead generation ads. Um, we do run, like when our books come out, we will do ad campaigns through Facebook. You have to be careful because Facebook will really spend your money. Facebook likes spending money. Amazon is the opposite. Our experience has been that it can be really hard to get Amazon to spend your money. Sometimes to get an ad to turn on, you have to put more money, sort of a lot of budget that you would never be comfortable spending in order to Amazon to get Amazon to actually turn on the ad and start serving it to people, and then you can sort of adjust your budget from there. But that's kind of the only two places that we really spend a lot of money. And I would say of those two, Amazon marketing is definitely where we spend the bulk of our advertising dollars is on that platform. And for us, it
Mhm.
makes sense because
Right.
as great as Facebook is, Facebook does not like to take people away from Facebook, right? Like
Mhm.
Facebook wants to keep people on Facebook. So Facebook lead gen ads are fine because it's still keeping people on Facebook. But any ad that's designed to take people from Facebook to someplace else is going to be less effective on Facebook because Facebook wants to keep people on their platform. Similarly,
Right.
people that are already on Amazon are shopping. They're shopping for things. They're looking for things. So
Mhm.
having the majority of our ad spend there is in our minds a good business practice because it's taking them to some place that's already on a site that they're on Amazon,
Mhm.
and they're already sort of primed to buy because they're shopping for things on Amazon. So we
Mhm.
find that we get much better conversion rates on Amazon than we do going from any other platform to Amazon.
Gotcha. Well, I definitely wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about any upcoming release that you have. I know that you release frequently,
Yes,
so.
yeah. There's a bunch of stuff. I just released the audiobook of Rogue Dungeon 4, which is called Rogue Evolution, narrated by Nick Padell, which is amazing. Nick is a fantastic narrator. I think he won the audio narrator of the year for 2019, maybe. He could
Mhm.
narrate a phone book, and people would listen to him narrating a phone book. He's that good. So if you're a fantasy fan and you are interested at all in getting into Gamelit, go check out the Rogue Dungeon series. You won't be disappointed at all. Fourth book came out. Uh, I'm working on another project called It's Bibliomancer 2. And I'm
Mhm.
working on it with my buddy Dakota Kraut, who is also a fabulous guy, great author, runs a publishing company called Mountaindale, and is arguably the biggest name or one of the biggest names in sort of the lit RPG gamelit genre. That takes place in
Mhm.
his Completionist Chronicles universe. We're busy working away on book 2, and I think that'll be out in a couple of months. And then I'm also working on a new series called Shadowcroft Academy for Dungeons, which is sort of this goofy sort of wuxia dungeon core lit RPG mashup of all kinds of fun things. I know all those words mean nothing, but hopefully someone out there will be like, "Oh, that's my jam. I want that thing exactly." So that's gonna be really fun, and hopefully we'll be able to release that later this year. So yeah, lots of things in the works. Really excited about
Mhm.
all of them.
Awesome. So you do one more question, I think, with regard to some of the things that you mentioned is you do a lot of cross-promotional campaigns, correct? Like you do co-writing
Hmm.
frequently. Would that be an
Yeah.
accurate statement?
No,
Can you
absolutely.
share
Yeah,
a
I would
little
say
bit
about
about that?
Yeah, I would say about 50% of my books are standalone in that they're written by me, and
Hmm.
50% of my books I would say are co-author titles that I work with other authors. Eden Hudson is one of my favorite people to co-author with. She co-authored
Hmm.
the Rogue Dungeon series with me. She has tons of great books, Path of Thunderbird and Death Cultivators coming out. Dakota I co-wrote with, and then Aaron Michael Ritchie, he's co-writing Shadowcroft with me. And
Hmm.
I think I like working with people. One of the things that I dislike about being a writer is that it can be really lonely.
Yeah.
Because I mean, a lot of it is just you. It's not as glamorous. It's not you sitting in a Parisian cafe like looking fancy with your neck scarf and your ascot and your it's not that. It's mostly just like hunched over your keyboard in the dark, like Gollum, like my precious, and you're just trying to hit your word count. It's mostly that, to be honest.
Right.
And it's that for a lot of hours a day, which can be
Hmm.
really taxing. So I find that doing the co-author projects is fun. Um,
Hmm.
because I have friends that I get to work with and people that I get to talk to, and I get to call up Aaron or Eden and say, "Oh man, isn't it so? You got to read this chapter I just wrote," or "Oh man, oh that thing that you did, that was so cool," and like it's fun. I get to be excited and I get
Hmm.
to work with people that I like. So I think that that's a big part of it. I think there's also a business reason behind it. In that it does allow you to write faster. Co-authoring is not like you're writing 50% of the book and they're writing 50% of the book. It's more like you're both writing 70% of a book.
Hmm.
But it's still a little bit less work than writing on your own. So I think it
Hmm.
does allow you to produce books more quickly. And I think that it can also be really good in terms of brand linkage. There are some people that I want my brand to be more associated, more closely associated with, right? Eden is
Right.
a great friend of mine who we've gone back ages and ages and ages. And part of the reason why we decided to co-write Rogue Dungeon is because I had had a lot of success with both Lazarus and with Viridian Gate Online. And she
Hmm.
was doing some standalone projects for us, and she didn't have the readership yet that I had. And so we wrote Rogue Dungeon both because we enjoyed it and we wanted to make money writing this book, but also so that my some of my readers would say, "Wow, this is a great series," and I really and Eden Hudson's a part of it. So that way, when Path of Thunderbird comes out, we can say, "Hey, that awesome author that I co-wrote Rogue Dungeon with? Well, she's got this new thing out," and people say, "Well, I like Rogue Dungeon," and then they go and they pick it up. So
Hmm.
oftentimes it's a way for us as a publisher to help sort of prop up and get some momentum for some of the new authors that we think are really talented, but that don't necessarily have readerships of their own yet. So that's one of our strategies.
Okay. So if you had to, we're pretty much at time, but
Yeah,
I want
sorry.
to ask you if you had, no, you're fine. This has been wonderful. Um, if you had one insight to share with a brand new author who's just launching, maybe published and hasn't, really gotten the sales to take off or their name to take off, what is one thing you would tell them to do?
Write more books faster. It's the single best thing that you can do. The best marketing for your current book is always going to be your next book forever and ever and ever and ever. The single best thing
Hmm.
that you can do as an indie for your business is to produce more content, because at the end of the day, this is a numbers game. And the more
Hmm.
shots on goal you have, the more books you put out into the world, the more chances you have to succeed. The more readers are going to say, "Oh, this person isn't a flake who's only going to write one book." They're going to say, "Wow, this person is someone who's in it for the long haul. They have 3 books. Oh, they have 5 books. This is someone that I want to go on this journey with. If I like the book, I know that there's going to be a lot more of that same content." A lot of readers are
Hmm.
gun shy for someone who only has 1 or 2 books. So write more books faster. It's the best possible thing that you can do.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all this great advice today. I think this, I mean, really, really good tactical advice that people can take advantage of. So I really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. Happy to help however I can, and thank you all. I hope this was beneficial for some of the folks that are listening. And yeah, just thanks for having me on. It was great.
Yeah, definitely. And for all of those who joined us, again, a recording of this will be posted to our YouTube channel. So Kindle Direct Publishing YouTube, you can find it. It'll be posted either later today or early tomorrow. And you'll receive that follow-up email tomorrow letting you know that the video is ready for you to watch. All right. Thank you all for joining us today. And as always, happy publishing.
Bye, guys.